Good Monday morning, everybody.
Morning.
How are y'all doing?
Morning.
Who's going to get us started with something? Who had an awesome weekend to share? KB.
I had a pretty interesting day yesterday. I was out, so my family, my cousin, married into a well-off family, and they own this summer house. It's like John Quincy Adams descendants, I guess. They own this summer house called like the Glades and out in Situate, and we took the boys out there to meet my cousin's boys who are from London, and they've never met them before, and my other cousins, and it was just really, really cool. We got to tour this like World War II bunker and do all this really neat stuff, and it was just exciting. I've lived in Massachusetts for 12 years, and I've never like really just been out there, so really cool.
Awesome. Anybody else want to share? Well, I'll kind of get into today's topic, which is hopefully going to help us with this work-life balance like a little bit, just kind of taken from some European culture. Came across something called a La Passeggiata. A Passeggiata. Anybody know what this is? Any Italians on the call that know what La Passeggiata is? We all got to brush up on our Italian. So La Passeggiata is it's like an evening stroll, and it kind of, for a lot of people, separates the work day from the, hey, I'm done, I'm going to relax, I'm going to spend the rest of the day with friends and family. It's extremely prevalent in the summertime, typically done daily, and in the evenings when it starts to cool down a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot of benefits to this stuff, but if you're having a big dinner meal, that walk 15-20 minutes after a meal can really help with digestion and blood glucose and everything like that. But the Italians actually take it as an opportunity to even dress up a little bit and get into the town squares and talk to people. And it's something that I'm finding my wife and I doing a lot more. We've got a dog, so that helps. So we get a walk in. Sometimes the kids come. Hasn't been a ton with the kids. I think we should do that a little bit more, but it's definitely great. And I think one of the benefits, not only just from a health perspective, for you guys, is we just see the neighbors out, right? A lot of our neighbors are out walking, or maybe even just see them out in front of their house doing something. So it gives you those opportunities to build those relationships inside of your community, so that you kind of become known as that local expert. So I think for a real estate agent, there's just so many benefits to this cultural practice. Knowing, as I did my research, almost all the European countries have some form of this. I jotted it down here. In Poland, they call it the spacer. Hungary calls it the esticeta. The Scandinavian countries have a bunch of weird names, but it ends in promenade. There's a lot that I can't pronounce from some of these countries. Paseo in Portugal, La Paseo in Spain. It's definitely, it's not just the Italians. This is being done all over Europe. And I think there's just a lot of benefits for us. So just thought I'd throw that one out there, kind of culminate your day. Hey, I'm not going to check the emails anymore. I'm not going to take any more phone calls, right? It's dinner, it's some family time. I know we've all been, we're striving for that balance. And I thought this might be kind of the way that you guys could handle it. I think when you're in this industry, you tend to have maybe a little bit later dinner. So if it was dinner, the walk, and then that's it, right? And that's kind of that transition into the nighttime routine, etc. So that's what I got for you today. Anybody kind of doing this, obviously not knowing that it was a cultural thing, or started doing stuff like this? Margaretta.
Of course, spazza. But not
Spazza. All right.
Sponsor.
Sorry.
Now, you know what? I have to, yes,
Not spacer? It's not
no,
spacer?
sponsor. That's a pronunciation. Trust me, Polish is so difficult. Don't even try. But awesome job. So yes, you know what it is? People would actually can just stop, and we go a lot. Like when I lived in Poland, it would be you go to the park. There'll be a lot of like around, park. You just walk. That's where you go on your date. Sometimes when you're young, you go for like a guy would ask you for a sponsor, which means you're going out for a little stroll. And obviously there's benches in the park that's organized, and you kind of do that. I have to say, because I've currently been to Poland, and I see less and less of that because people are on their electronics and more driving. There's a little bit of a lost art in that, but it was a big thing when I was in Poland, and I think maybe some people are still doing it, but I see less of it. In Italy, though, I have Garrett's parents, grandparents. He said that he remember they would always at the evening take after dinner their walk. And French for a fact, I had a good French friend, and even if she would invite a group of people to her house after we had our wine and cheese and grapes and dinner, we all actually went for a walk. So it was like a thing that we all did. So it's definitely a big thing in Europe.
Thanks for sharing the actual experience. That's great. I do remember, big dinners at my uncle's house in Wilbraham. It was always a thing, but I just thought it was, I don't know. I didn't realize it was a cultural thing, but it was definitely something that we did after that big dinner together. We weren't doing that as a family at my house growing up. So we've been really, really enjoying it, trying to if you're going to treat yourself to a Starbucks on the weekend, I'm in walking distance to the Starbucks. I'm trying to walk to the grocery store if you just need a few things, put the backpack on, throw them in the backpack, walk back. So, yeah. Anybody else have a share around this? All right. Well, who's got something going on real estate related? Hey, B, I know, I don't know if you're in a position to talk, but I see Tracy's hand up, so I'm going to go with Tracy first. But I'd love for you to kind of maybe talk through a little bit about what you were dealing with Friday into the weekend, et cetera, if you're in a position. Tracy, go ahead.
Good morning. So I was pretty excited last week. I got cleared to close one of my deals that was, it's sidetracked by the IRS and all that good stuff. So we went last week for a walkthrough, and it's a two-family, and of course it was not broom swept. The tenant had left a pretty good amount of stuff in the apartment. The garage is full of stuff, mattresses in the yard, big tires. I think that they're actually like big rig tires in the yard, and we've just been like having a nightmare time with the seller, just trying to get this worked out. Tenant's been gone for about a month and a half, so I don't know if he never went to the property. And on top of it, the basement was wet, and the water was turned off, so we couldn't even turn anything on to see if there was something leaking or what was going on. A good amount of like mold and mildew that wasn't there before. So trying to get this all worked out so we can get this closing done.
Where are you kind of at right now, Tracy? Like,
So
are
right
you in
now
need of?
it doesn't seem like the seller really wants to do anything. He was trolling me this weekend. He does that. Like, he's not my client, but he was just like, "Oh, I'm done with your client. I'm done with your attorney." I didn't respond. I just called the agent. I'm like, yeah, I know he's just an antagonizer. Just like if I had a property, I would clean it. You know what I mean? When my tenants moved out,
Yeah.
I have a property. I literally have a two-family house, and I've had to clean after tenants have left, and I don't wait a month and a half to go do it. I usually do it do it the 2 days after they're gone, so I know that they're literally gone, and then go up there and clean whatever has to be cleaned and deal with all that nonsense. But he's just like, he wanted to offer $1,000 credit, which isn't sufficient. It really isn't. So the other agent was trying to like find out what he could, if we could like figure out a way to get dumpsters and all that good stuff. But it's, it's just so infuriating when, when someone's aware that we're working towards something and they just do nothing, and they were threatening to put tenants in there. And I'm like, you can't put tenant in there. The- you,
Yeah.
you have no
Well,
water in the building. So what are you talking about?
one thing I want to point out that you did there, Tracy, is you didn't respond to the text messages, and too often we're seeing agents get involved in a back and forth over text messages, over emails, and this you guys have really got to, when it comes to these negotiations, do this stuff over the phone until we've got a resolution. Then we're going to summarize it in an email to say, hey, this is what we captured. I'm seeing a lot when we seem to get in trouble with a client, sellers unhappy, buyers unhappy. It's look at all these emails and texts back and forth. And it's like, that's the problem. We're not having conversations, or visiting the client, going to their house, sitting down and having a conversation about, hey, what's going on? Right? We were here, now you're here, you seem to be frustrated, right? And having these difficult conversations. And we're getting stuck in, oh, here's an email where they said this, or here's an email or a text message where they said that. And it just typically, when we're seeing problems, that's where we're seeing it, is emails and text messages. So good job of not getting involved in that, and trying to work with the other agent. Anything that we can do specifically to help on this one, Tracy, or you feel like it's just you guys got to negotiate this thing out?
Well, we're still in the midst of it. We're really hoping that we were going to, we're hoping to close today, but we were really thrown by the water. My client did a little further investigation on his own on Friday, and he actually went to the water department. And because there wasn't really, when he turned on one of the faucets, that may have been a culprit for all the water. He's like, it only dripped out some water. So the water department confirmed on the 29th, he turned off the water, which is not customary. So, I have a good relationship with the other agent. And certainly if I can think of anything that I might need to really get this thing to the closing table tomorrow, I'll definitely reach out to you guys. 'Cause I know you guys are always there with some resources and some ideas for how we can get things done. And I just don't want to engage with somebody who's in a negative space. I mean, what's that going to give me? It's not going to get me anything good in my life. And, it's going to give more power to the negative that the seller was giving out. He was saying he's done with my client, he's done with his attorney, and he was gonna sell it to somebody else on Tuesday. I'm like, okay. So
Yeah, and I think
it was
this
just
is
more nonsense. He was trying to like crap all over me is what he was trying to do.
I think this is just a good lesson too, if you haven't been through these scenarios where people will go down this rabbit hole, but I'm not selling it to your clients, and I'm not doing this, and we're backing out, and we're selling it to somebody else. They don't really mean that, right? I mean, sometimes they really, really do mean that. But most of the time, you've got to understand this isn't a personal attack. They are just frustrated with what's going on. And we've got to get to the bottom of what's really causing the problems, why they're acting out like this, and how do we get it resolved. Because I can't tell you how many times, I've heard this transaction was over and we still get to the finish line, or we're never doing that, or we would never do that. We'd never consider doing that. So just know that people are going to say things in your transactions that they don't 100% mean. And maybe just sometimes some time, everybody takes a deep breath. We really try and, hey, let's talk about this thing in the morning. Let's rehuddle. Let's do it in person and see if we can get you what you want. KB, I think this is actually a pretty good transition into your story. Are you in a position to tell that one, or?
Yeah, but my story is kind of at a standstill right now because I have a very stubborn seller and a irritated buyer. So situation was this is a listing that we had taken a while back. There had been quite a bit of miscommunication throughout the transaction. The sellers were really not happy. The buyers wound up submitting an offer that they were really offended by because it was not much higher than the open door price that they had been given.
Amy, I want to just back up a little bit on this story, where this is a situation where this guy is getting coached, we believe, by another agent to cancel this transaction.
Yes.
Right? They want to terminate the deal.
Yep.
And so, KB stepped in, A lot of times if you get, somebody from leadership, you can get a seller to calm down a little bit, etc. It just didn't feel like we could. And we actually agreed, you know what, this isn't going to move forward, and we're going to let you out of this deal. We're trying to work a referral fee for another agent to take over the property.
Right.
So a lot of times that's the path that you're going to go down, is like, look, you're clearly unhappy. We believe we've done our job. You don't believe we have. Sounds like you've got somebody coaching you, and we're not going to say those things, but it just sounded, I want this canceled. I don't want it withdrawn. When they start to use those types of words, somebody else is putting a bug in their ear. The agent didn't do this, and look at this mistake they made, and look at that mistake that they made. Right. So we were in the process of trying to work that out, saying, all right, we're going to let you out of this deal. And then an offer comes in.
Right. Right.
Right. And so maybe kind of pick it up from the offer.
Right. So it was the second showing. The offer comes in. The offer comes in pretty low. At this point, the seller wasn't answering phone calls from our agent. So they sent the offer over. And they literally didn't say anything but declined. So our agent tried calling them. Again, they wouldn't answer the phone. Called the buyer's agent, let the buyer's agent know that the sellers had declined the offer. Buyer's agent came back and said, what do we need to do? They want this house. So, our agent kind of went through as best as he could without communication with the sellers, to try to help them make their offer a little bit more appealing. They came back with another offer that was a little bit higher. Again, it was declined. Right. So at that point, I wound up on the phone with the sellers, had a long conversation with them, sort of was able to, again, a conversation with them, had a long conversation with them about kind of what their plan was, what was going on in their life. Come to find out there's a lot of emotional stuff going on right now. The wife, she really is the difficult party. She's going through a lot right now. And because the buyers were asking for a very quick close, they wanted a 11-day close, all cash, but they also wanted all of their furniture. She was freaking out, like totally freaking out. And majority of my conversations with them yesterday was trying to figure out a way to make them feel a little bit more comfortable. They wound up sending over a counter that I told them was too high, because they wanted to include what it was going to cost them to rent a furnished apartment, as well as the extra money that she feels the furniture is worth, even though I explained to her that that's not really what the furniture is worth. I also offered to them, why don't we, instead of, asking them to go over asking, come back in with just an asking price offer and see if they'll consider a lease back. Because that will be a lot easier than trying to find a rental that is furnished. They were dead set on no, they wanted this offer above asking. So sent it over to the buyer.
Just interrupt. This property's been on the market for how long with no offer?
75 days with no offer. However,
and now you have a seller that wants over asking for the property.
Right.
So like, it's just
when
not realistic.
It's already on the higher end of market value. Like it's already not, it should have been put on lower, which we told them in the beginning. Yeah. So now they want an over asking offer, $200,000 over asking offer. And obviously the buyers were like, no, there's no way we're going to do that. Had a long conversation with the buyer's agent. She's not thrilled. So it's really kind of a mess. At this point, we are waiting to see with our last offer, or last counter, what they're going to say, but I know they're going to say no. The sellers are just dead set on unrealistic expectations. And I'm at a point now where I've never met these people. So I need to go to their house and meet them. I don't think I've saved this buyer, but I do think I've saved this client, the listing. And I do think that I've built enough rapport with them that they trust me. They're calling me nonstop, and asking me opinions on things. So I think that I'll be able to get them back on the market. But I did explain to them, if we lost this buyer and we had to stay on the market, there's a good chance you're going to wind up under asking anyway. And their bigger thing is, well, that's fine. We'll wind up under asking and we'll keep our furniture with a normal close timeline. So I think that if the expectation was set a little bit better with the buyer from the beginning in regards to what the sellers were actually willing to do, we wouldn't be in this position right now. But since everyone has this idea in their head that the sellers feel like they're giving too much and the buyers feel like they're not getting enough, it's all about conversation in the beginning. And I 100% agree. I think the majority of the conversation was not done verbally. It was mostly through very short text messages. So I don't really know what's going to wind up happening if we're going to be able to get this thing under contract. We'll find out today, but I do think that I've been able to save the client. So that's, I guess, the upside of that.
Yeah, and it's just really messy, and I want you guys to know how it can go from extremely messy. Like we were asking for a referral fee to the other agent. They came back with, nope, we're not even. We want out. You did not perform your duties. Here's a list of things that your agent did wrong, right? And I've never really gotten it to be that nasty. Usually, if somebody's like, hey, look, I want out, and I'm like, hey, our agent did a little bit of work here. We'll let you out. Give us a referral fee when it closes from the new agent. That should be fine with the new agent. Usually we can work that out. You know, they were like, nope, and here's why. There's this mistake, that mistake, right? And then it was, well, we got an offer, but you guys are just rejecting it. We'll let you out, but we're not going to let this thing just go right under contract with another agent with the same buyer. So, hey, we'll let you out, but if this buyer buys it, we get our full commission. Nope, we're not doing that, this. So, and now we're at this point, right? So I just want you guys to know how far like you can go when you can show some empathy, you can have some conversations. You know, I'm sure KB's got, you know, hours on the phone into these clients. So you just don't give up, you know, go ahead and ask for help sometimes.
Yeah, I think one really big thing is to just ask for help, right? Maybe get someone in the transaction that's a little bit more savvy with conversation and different techniques to hopefully be able to keep the clients happy and get them to where you need them to be. But I think the biggest thing that would have helped a lot more, and this is what I have this, so I've actually gotten a lot of these emails. I filter a lot of what Steve gets recently, but a lot of what I get is, we don't feel like your agent performed the duties that they're saying that they were going to perform, right? And 9 out of 10 times I can prove that we did. But that's because we have good documentation. I have a good thread of communication, and agents are able to send me over like, nope, this is when I sent them this is how I showed them this, and that, you know, that is so helpful to me. So when you guys are having these conversations over the phone, make sure you're sending some sort of a recap in writing so that I can have a paper trail and I can go to bat for our agents. And this is for any brokerage anywhere. You know, your broker's job is to support you and to have your back and to make sure that we're doing everything we can, but you guys got to help us with that. And that's definitely how you do that, right? And then there's the other side of it, which really sucks, is when you feel like maybe we didn't do our best job, which is, I'm kind of leaning on that in this situation. So you know, then you got to maybe jump through a little extra a little more hoops to make people happy. So
There's a lot there. Does anybody have any questions on how certain things got handled, or? You know, we need to be prepared for this stuff. The market's shifting a little bit, not just in Florida. Stuff is sitting a little bit longer. And when stuff starts to sit, all of a sudden sellers are looking at you, the listing agent. And for the past 3 or 4 years, you had to put a sign in the ground, throw it in the MLS with some decent photos, priced somewhere near the number, and it was going to sell. Now, all of a sudden, you know, so a lot of you guys haven't been an agent in a market where it doesn't just sell. And so you're not used to weekly conversation of, why haven't you sold my house? Next week, why haven't you sold my house? Next week, why haven't you sold my house? This has gone on for 70 days. My guess is there wasn't a weekly conversation, right? We're just letting all of this stuff bubble up instead of, you know, throwing some data. I think in this market, I think the average days on market was something like 50. When you say this market, this price range recently, this is what's going on. They're not just flying off the shelf.
right.
Cora, you had something?
Oh, sorry.
Katie, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just want to add real quick. I mean, I think that the big thing is as well, like I've seen this happen because people want to just get listings, is they're taking listings way above what the properties are worth, and they don't have a plan or clear expectation with the seller of what we're going to do when it doesn't move. And I think that in a market like this, you have to have that conversation and it has to be in writing. So, okay, Mr. Seller, this is what I'm recommending we put the house on. You want to put it on at this number, which is $30,000 higher, right? Or I'm just using a number, right? If we don't have any showings or we don't get any activity within the next week, we need to have something in writing that you're going to bring it down to my number so I can market this thing appropriately. Because the reality is they have to be able to trust you, and you have to be able to be confident enough to say, I can't take this. It's just not going to be worth my time, my effort, and my marketing expenses.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add, Steve, to a lot of things you guys just touched on, but it's frustrating to see, and I've been in sales over 30 years. It's frustrating to see the tough conversations being had in writing, either by email or mostly by text. I mean, tough conversations, you have to show your empathy or your strength if you're negotiating. You can't see that, or you can't hear that in a text. It's all about your strength, where your positioning is, and your clients want to hear how you feel. So if you're having these tough conversations over text and phone, and I'm even just talking about trying to get an appointment or delivering bad news, you didn't get the house, or, unfortunately the house is already gone, things like that. But something as important as negotiating a deal cannot be done via text or email. You got to pick up that phone. You have to speak with all parties involved, understand how strong they feel, and go from there. But if you just rely on what you read, it's not going to go anywhere. And you're particularly not going to show any value, any care, any empathy, any sympathy, anything, any emotion.
I think that's the key part, is sometimes the client doesn't feel like you care, right? They don't get that you care. There's no way after 4 hours on the phone with KB, with this seller, that they can think that she doesn't care, right? She's taking time away from her family on the weekend to put them in a position to win. Like, they know she cares. And
or
I
even
don't
on the
know.
negotiation side, I mean, if you're trying to be strong with the other side, they don't hear you. They just read it. They're going to test you, and that might tick off your clients. So all conversations, anything tough, I think should be not in person, excuse me, on phone or in person, and you move from there.
Nicole, did you have something?
I was just going to comment on how you were saying you need like weekly touch points and how important it is, because if you're not having those, they're going to have those conversations with someone else, even if it's not another agent, like in this case, but it could be a neighbor or a friend who says, why is your house sitting? Mine sold in 4 days, or the house down the street sold in 3 days and had multiple offers, and they're going to start questioning it. And then that's probably where they end up reaching out to another agent and start getting advice from that person. So if you're not the one having those conversations with your clients, they're going to be talking to other people.
Yeah, I definitely think that's what happened in this case. Right? I think they just were casually talking to some other people. All of a sudden, one of those casuals turns into, my friend's an agent, or our Uncle Larry, doesn't he sell? Like, let's see what he thinks. He takes one look, he finds like something wrong with the listing, a picture that he doesn't think is, oh my God, this is, I can't believe they would have done this. I would have never done that. Right. And they don't know the whole circumstances. And now all of a sudden they're down your throat. So pricing progression, that training that we have in Zendesk, is you guys need to know that back and forth with the market that we're in right now. If we're not coming on at the price that you think it needs to be at to sell, because they've got time to wait, that's fine. But it needs to have been their decision to come on at that number, because I don't need to sell it in the next 90 days. I've got 180. I've got 3/4 of a year. I've got a year to sell this. We've got to be on the same page. So please, if you don't know a pricing progression strategy inside and out, don't take a listing until you do. You gotta know that process inside and out, and you'll have less and less of these difficult conversations. Any final thoughts on this?
Steve, I was just going to say, I posted that recently in the Connecticut chat, and I think Corey put it in Eastern Mass as well, if anyone hasn't seen it.
Good.
It was last
Yeah,
week at some point.
And you got to watch it a couple of times. You've got to know it inside and out, and that's got to be the way that you're approaching these sellers. Hey, we can absolutely go over, what we think the market value is, because it sounds like you guys aren't in a rush to sell it. So that in 90 days, they go, well, it hasn't sold, but you told me we picked that price because you guys weren't in a rush to sell this. Right? Those kind of conversations.
I present that like it's a dessert tray. Here are your three options. Here's where you stand. What's your timing? And okay, you need to go fast. Here's option number one. You're okay seeing what the market does. We'll do two. You're in no rush. We'll do option three. Order the cheesecake, the pudding pie, or the apple pie. Which one do you want?
I'd go with the pricing progression language over Corey's desserts. If anybody's questioning which way they should go, I go with the language and the pricing progression strategy. All right, guys, great start to the week. Hopefully there was some nuggets in there that you guys are taking away. Go take your Passeggiata. Let's get those rocking every evening, and we'll talk to you guys again tomorrow morning. All right, have a great Monday.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good one.